That box of crackers in your kitchen right now is not the healthy snack you think it is. Every day, Australians serve these to their kids, pair them with cheese, and snack on them without hesitation. Because they're baked, they're light, and they don't feel like junk food. But that's the story you've been sold, not the reality. Because many crackers sold in Australian supermarkets are built around shelf life, not health. They're processed, stabilized, and formulated using industrial fats that don't need to be clearly highlighted on the label. The packaging looks clean. The claims sound reassuring. And that's exactly why most people never question what they're actually eating. This isn't about overeating or bad choices. It is about a product category that hides behind a health halo while quietly exposing people to fats they never knowingly choose. Once you understand how these crackers are really made, that safe snack stops looking safe very quickly. Brand number 1, Arnott Shapes. Arnott Shapes are one of the most recognizable snacks in Australia, and that familiarity is exactly what makes them risky. These aren't treated like junk food. They're packed into lunchboxes, put out at parties, and eaten casually because they're baked, crunchy, and feel safer than chips. But that comfort is misleading. Shapes are engineered for shelf life and texture first, not health. To achieve that long-lasting crunch and consistency, formulations rely on industrial fats that can include hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils, the kind of processing that creates trace trans fats without needing bold warnings on the front of the pack. Here's the trick most people never notice. Australian labeling laws allow products to list 0 grams trans fat per serving if the amount is small enough. That doesn't mean trans fats aren't there. It means they're legally rounded down. And when a product is eaten regularly, those small amounts add up. Because shapes are seen as an everyday snack, frequency becomes the real problem. A handful today, another tomorrow. Over time, that quiet exposure matters, especially for heart health. The packaging talks flavor. The label talks marketing. What it doesn't talk about is how these fats behave in the body when consumed consistently. Brand number 2, Ritz. Ritz crackers are marketed as light, buttery, and harmless, the kind of snack people don't even think twice about. They're paired with cheese, served at gatherings, and handed to kids because they don't feel like junk food. That soft, familiar image is exactly why Ritz flies under the radar. But Ritz isn't a simple baked cracker. That signature buttery texture doesn't come from butter or real fats you'd recognize. It comes from industrially processed vegetable fats designed to create mouthfeel, extend shelf life, and keep the product consistent for months. And when fats are processed this way, trace trans fats can be created without ever being clearly highlighted on the label. Here's where the deception deepens. Ritz benefits from serving size tricks. If the trans fat content per serving falls below a certain threshold, it can legally be listed as 0 grams trans fat. Most people read that and move on, unaware that multiple servings turn 0 into something very real over time. Because Ritz is positioned as a casual, everyday cracker, frequency becomes the danger. A few with cheese, a few more later. That repeated exposure is exactly how hidden trans fats become part of a regular diet without consent. Brand number 3, Jatz. Jatz is sold as the classic cracker, plain, simple, and supposedly safe. It's the one people reach for when they want something neutral with cheese, dips, or a quick snack. No bold flavors, no loud claims. Just quiet trust. And that's exactly how it gets away with what's inside. That familiar crunch doesn't come for free. Jatz relies on processed vegetable fats to lock in texture and shelf stability. Those fats are treated, refined, and stabilized so the cracker can sit for months without changing. And when fats go through that level of processing, trace trans fats can be created, even when they never appear clearly on the front of the pack. Here's the loophole. If the amount per serving is small enough, it can legally be listed as 0 grams trans fat. Most people stop reading right there, but crackers aren't eaten one serving at a time. They're eaten by the handful, repeatedly, because they're seen as harmless. That's where the real risk sits. Jatz isn't marketed as indulgent, so there's no guilt break. It becomes an everyday habit. And everyday exposure to industrial fats, even in small amounts, is exactly how heart risk creeps in quietly. Brand number 4, Cruskits. Cruskits are marketed as the smarter choice, thin, crisp, and often associated with lighter eating. They reposition as the cracker you choose when you trying to be good, less indulgent, more controlled. That image is exactly what lowers people's guard. But Cruskits aren't a health food. To achieve that ultra-light crunch and long shelf life, these crackers rely on heavily processed vegetable fats. Those fats are refined and stabilized to behave predictably in large-scale production. And when fats are processed this way, trace trans fats can be created even if they never show up clearly on the label. Here's where the health halo does the most damage. Because Cruskits feel light, people eat more of them and more often. A few with lunch, a few as a snack, a few more later. Serving sizes become meaningless, and any 0 grams trans fat claim is based on rounding, not absence. The packaging reinforces the illusion. Words like thin, crisp, and lighter suggest safety. But your heart doesn't respond to marketing language. It responds to the fats you consume repeatedly, even in small amounts. Cruskits aren't dangerous because they're indulgent. They read dangerous because they convince people they read harmless. And that's how daily exposure slips in unnoticed. Brand number 5, Premium Crackers. Premium crackers are sold as the safest option on the shelf. Plain, no flavors, no gimmicks. This is the cracker people choose when they want something neutral, especially for kids, sick days, or simple snacks with cheese. That plain image is exactly what makes them so easy to trust. But plain doesn't mean unprocessed. To achieve that dry crunch and long shelf life, premium crackers rely on refined vegetable fats that are stabilized for mass production. Those fats are treated to behave consistently over time, and that processing is where trace trans fats can be created, even when they're never clearly highlighted on the front of the pack. Here's the part most people overlook. Because these crackers taste neutral, they're eaten in larger amounts. A few turn into many. Serving sizes stop mattering. And when labels say 0 grams trans fat, that often reflects rounding rules, not the true absence of trans fats across repeated servings. Premium crackers benefit from invisibility. They don't raise alarms because they don't feel indulgent. There's no guilt, no pause, no reason to question what's inside. That's how daily exposure becomes routine, not because people choose risk, but because they're never warned. Brand number 6, Vita Wheat. Vita Wheat is one of the most misleading cracker brands in Australia because it hides behind one powerful word, whole grain. That single label convinces people this is a heart-healthy choice. It ends up in lunchboxes, on cheese boards, and in diets where people think they're doing the right thing. But whole grain doesn't cancel out processing. To achieve the long shelf life and consistent crunch, Vita Wheat still relies on refined vegetable fats that are treated and stabilized for mass production. That level of processing is exactly where trace trans fats can be introduced, even when the front of the pack looks clean and responsible. Here's where the deception really works. When people see whole grain, they eat more and question less. The product feels virtuous, so serving sizes are ignored. A few crackers turn into a habit. And if the label says 0 grams trans fat, most people assume the risk is 0, without realizing that rounding rules allow small amounts to disappear on paper. This isn't about one serving. It's about repeated exposure to industrial fats hidden inside a product people trust for heart health. The irony is brutal, a cracker chosen for health quietly working against it over time. Brand number 7, Water Crackers. Water crackers are marketed as the purest option on the shelf. No flavor dust, no cheese powder, no indulgence. Just flour, water, and salt. At least that's what people believe. These are the crackers served at wine nights, paired with cheese and chosen specifically because they feel clean and safe. That perception is the danger. To achieve that ultra-dry snap and long shelf life, water crackers still rely on industrial processing techniques. Refined vegetable fats are often used to control texture, stability, and consistency at scale. And when fats are processed this aggressively, trace trans fats can be created, even when they never highlight it in bold on the packaging. Here's why this category slips through unnoticed. Water crackers don't trigger caution. People don't limit portions. They snack continuously because it feels harmless. And when labels list 0 grams trans fat, most people never question how that number was calculated or how many servings they actually eating. This is how risk hides in plain sight. Not through flavor or indulgence, but through trust. Water crackers aren't chosen for pleasure. They're chosen for safety. And that false sense of safety is exactly what allows repeated exposure to go unchecked. Brand number 8, Coles Home Brand Crackers. Coles Home Brand Crackers exist for one reason: cost. These aren't designed around nutrition, quality, or long-term health. They're designed to be as cheap as possible while still looking acceptable on the shelf. And when price is the priority, ingredient quality is always the first thing sacrificed. To hit those low price points, these crackers rely heavily on refined vegetable fats and industrial processing shortcuts. Shelf stability matters more than what those fats do inside your body. And when fats are refined and stabilized aggressively, trace trans fats can be created even if they never show up clearly on the front label. Here's what makes this brand especially dangerous: frequency. Because it's cheap, it's bought often. Families don't treat it as an occasional snack. It becomes a pantry staple. Kids eat it. Adults snack on it. And because it's just crackers, no one thinks twice about how often it's consumed. The label might say 0 grams trans fat, but that number is based on rounding rules, not reality. Multiple servings turn 0 into exposure, quietly, consistently, and without warning. Coles doesn't sell safety. It sells affordability and lets consumers absorb the long-term costs. Brand number 9, low-fat, baked, healthy crackers. This is the most deceptive category in the entire cracker aisle, not because it looks unhealthy, but because it looks responsible. These are the crackers people buy on purpose to be better. Low-fat, bake, whole grain, smart choice, or so they think. This is where labeling works against you. When fat is reduced, manufacturers compensate with processing. To keep texture, shelf life, and crunch, refined vegetable oils are treated, stabilized, and restructured. That process can create trace trans fats, but thanks to labeling loopholes, those fats don't have to be clearly declared if they fall below rounding thresholds. So the box says 0 grams trans fat. The front says better for you, and the consumer stops questioning. That's the trap. Because these crackers are eaten more often, people snack freely. Kids get them daily. There's no guilt break because the product is framed as healthy. And that repeated exposure is exactly how small amounts of industrial fats become a long-term heart risk. This category doesn't rely on flavor or indulgence. It relies on trust. And trust is far more powerful than appetite. By now, one thing should be impossible to ignore. Crackers aren't the harmless light snack most Australians believe they are. What looks simple on the surface is often the result of heavy processing, shelf life engineering, and ingredient shortcuts that were never designed with your long-term health in mind. This isn't about one brand being bad. It's about a system that hides industrial fats behind clean packaging, familiar names, and health-sounding words. Labels don't lie outright. They just tell you the minimum required, while the rest stays buried in fine print and rounding rules. And the real danger isn't eating crackers once in a while. It's eating them often without awareness because you were told they were safe. Small exposures don't feel dangerous. But repeated daily habits are exactly how risk builds quietly, without permission. Once you see how this works, you can't unsee it. And that's the point. Awareness doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you informed. Your heart doesn't care about branding. And it doesn't recognize healthy labels. It only responds to what you repeatedly feed it. Now I want to hear from you. Which cracker brand on this list surprised you the most? Is there one you've been buying for years without ever checking the ingredients? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might help someone else question a habit they never thought twice about. If you have kids or you pack lunchboxes, share this with someone who needs to see it. And if you want more videos exposing what's really inside everyday supermarket foods, make sure you're subscribed. Because once you start reading labels instead of trusting them, your food choices change permanently.